Going to take you live now to Goulburn in New South Wales, where Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor is speaking.
The individual numbers, headline inflation is up for the month. We see inflation excluding volatiles is up for the month. Core inflation is stubbornly above 3%, well above where we need it to be. And services inflation, indeed, critical services inflation, is above 4%. And all of this tells us that the government's been playing games. It's seeking to hide inflation, but we know underlying inflation is not where it needs to be. Now, you don't need to tell any Australians that. They know it. They see it in the bank account. They see it when they go to the checkout. They see it when they have to pay their bills. They are suffering, and we know they're making tough decisions at a time like this, whether it's the decision to dig deep into their savings to pay for those essentials, whether it's working extra hours or taking on, indeed, a second job in many cases, whether it's cutting back on those things that they've become used to and that their families expected. And we know there is not light at the end of the tunnel anytime soon. We know that because on the government's own numbers that were put out just before Christmas, very quietly, so people wouldn't take any notice of it, we saw from those numbers that we're not going to see Australians' standard of living get back to where it was when Labor came to power until 2030 at the earliest. This is an absolutely desperate situation. Critical in the numbers today is also that prices are going up, not down, and there's no expectation of that changing. They'll continue to go up, and indeed, since Labor came to power, it's worth highlighting this. We've seen the cost of food go up by over 12%, Rents up over 16%, gas up over 36%, health over 10%, and so on. The list goes on. All of those cost pressures continue to be there, and there's no expectation the prices are going anywhere but up from here. Now, Australia is absolutely at the back of the pack in dealing with this. We know our core inflation is right at the back of where we want it to be compared to peer countries across the world. It's higher than most of our peers right across the world. And the result of that is we're not seeing the interest rate cuts that we have seen in the United States, in Europe, in the UK, in Canada, in Europe, and elsewhere across our peer countries. They've seen interest rate cuts. We haven't seen them because our inflation remains stubbornly high. Now, the truth is, sitting underneath all of this is we have a Prime Minister who is more interested in fighting Peter Dutton and fighting journalists than he is in fighting inflation. More interested in fighting Peter Dutton and journalists than he is in fighting inflation. He's got more nasty things to say about journalists and Peter Dutton than he has to say about how he's going to beat inflation. And we know that because he's failed completely to beat this inflation blight that is on this country and the pain that so many Australians are feeling. We need a country where we're getting back on track, back in the right direction, and that means getting back to basics, putting in place the fiscal rules that have been in place for so long to bring inflation down in past episodes, making sure that we take red tape out of the way of small businesses